Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Book for Lunch. And I want to just go through a few announcements with you guys, or ladies and gentlemen. We'll get back to this one. You will see this coming up in the library as our holiday schedule. Just remember this, during the holidays when there isn't school, most of the time we close at 6, unless it's a day before a holiday, then we close at 5. Or of course on a Friday, we always close at 5. But this will kind of show you, and we'll post that online. We'll put it on our Facebook page, we'll put it on our website, and we'll have it out for you on the doors and things like that. Okay. Next month, we have Dr. Ray Nolan coming to speak to us. Now, I realize he spoke to us to the museum last month, but it's going to be a different talk. So don't say I already listen to him. But he's going to be talking about enduring Indians of Kansas. And it's totally different. So don't think he's going to say the same thing, because otherwise I would have said we can't have two people, the same person speaking on the same topic. Just won't do that, because I don't want to bore you guys. Because some of you go to both places for lunch. All right. And we believe in February that Rich Hawkins will speak on his new book that we helped him write. Actually, he did the writing. We helped him, Carol Barnes, myself, Paul Steele, John Sanford, Linda Jones, helped him put this book together. And then Leroy Printing helped us print it on City of Little Hill. And it's just got delightful, wonderful, awesome poetry. And his poetry is wonderful, but you should hear him just recite it. He's really good. So, yeah, so that'll be on in February. And then in March, we have Andy Burnham. It says her newest book. I confess this is not her newest book, but it's the one that I have a picture of, because I don't have the picture of the newest book yet. It's still coming, but she'll be in March. And then April, we have some Book for Lunch things for National Library Week coming up, but I'm not going to tell you about those. However, I am going to tell you that we do need people who would like to read a book, tell us about a book and why you love a book, because we can't always pay for offers and things, but also people like to hear from our people that read books and trust them. When you say you like a book, somebody else is going to check that book out and read it. So don't be shy. Our ESL class starts January 22nd. They figure after everybody comes home from visiting family and friends, about the 22nd, they'll start their class. Story time will start January 6th. Tennessee will start just right after the new year. Play with Purpose will be the 5th. During the holidays, our Youth Activity Center will be open from 1 until 5. Where kids can come down. Now, if there's no children, then we're not going to have it open. So we'll have the door that'll say open, but the door may be closed. So the kids will have to tell us, and we'll go down and be with them. Because it depends on how many children are gone for the holidays. And some children don't live as close by. So we just kind of play it by ear on each holiday season, not knowing what children are doing, but we do want to make it available for them. I do want to remind you that we do have hush offices. If you need a place that you can be quiet or read or talk to a friend, can't eat in there. Sorry, can't have coffee and food. We don't want to clean that up. But if you know an entrepreneur or someone who's doing business, they can do that. This office here will take 6 to 8 people, or it's 1 to 8 people. 8 is really cramped, but you can. And then there's some that have 2 or 4, and then you can do them online. And if you look on the website here, there's a little button, and you can reserve the room. If you don't like the internet, just call us, and Katie or Garrett or any of us can help you book a room. Okay. You can also book the meeting room, you can book the basement with us also. We just ask a few questions. You will see this is our winter newsletter. It's out here on the table. Now buy. put it together. You will notice some things hanging from the ceiling that some of the staff have made that was part of her paper decorations and things, and she may put some others out in the next little while for December. She's making us get creative. I cheated though. I took all the things that people had given me because I didn't have time to do creation of paper, and I said, here, you can have this. Somebody gave it to me that I love, so, to inspire others who are crafty people, okay? So I confess that, didn't I? I didn't bring my stuff. And then Shelf Indulgence is Vi and Katie and others reviewing books in the video, and you can enjoy their discussion on books. You would, and it's, if you just look for this little button on the website, you'll find it, okay? And this is our new website. It's not new, it's the same website, we've just been updating it. So all these buttons here, that one says like get a library card, our calendar, reserve a room, get a library loan. You can go to our online catalog, online resources, and you can suggest an item. And then below is some other buttons. Up here, if somebody speaks Spanish, they get all of this translated into Spanish. So that's kind of cool. And so all of these we have different, pull down menus. So I just wanted to let you know we're working hard on getting that. Look, so check out our website. Thanks to Chelsea and Garrett and all of us, we're kind of working together as an advertising team. So trying to do things. And this is to tell you that when it starts snowing and get icy, we'll put a little advertisement here that we're closed, and on Facebook, and then on our catalog. We'll say, hey, we're closed today because of the snowstorm, which you probably will figure out anyway, but just in case there's any question. Just in case you get questions. Somebody calls and says, are you open today? Yeah, there you go. Don't forget, you can get ebooks from Moola. You can get ebooks from Libby or what we call our Sunflower Library. And then, yeah, that's about it. So, escape. Let's go back to the very beginning, because I've got to get this right. So, here we go. José Faus is a Kansas Humanities speaker, and he is presenting to us the dynamics of immigration through the lens of visual art and poetry. So I give him about 40 minutes, but he said he could take as long or as little as he likes, and he will let you ask questions and do all kinds of fun things. I think we will really enjoy him. I'm just so glad that Side is doing our programming. We're getting some new things and new programs. If you have any suggestions, you can speak to her. You can speak to me too, or when, but if you have somebody who's interested or you want to suggest something, please say something to Bob and she will bring a speaker. But right now, let me have José come up and I'll unplug my stuff and plug it in.
Just go.
Okay.
Which shows up waiting for which.
It'll show up.
It's taking its moment. It was there just a while.
It takes a moment.
Well, okay. While we're waiting for that to start, I do want to say something that for me, libraries were probably one of the most important things in my young life when I came to this country. People always talk about who their heroes were. For me, it was my teachers and my librarians. And I'll tell you why the librarians. My grandmother had read to me when I was a little kid in a comic book form, The Odyssey. So it was like they used to kind of serialize it in newspapers. So she would get that, and Prince Rabbit was the other one. So she turned me on to that. And I remember I went to the library in Kansas, Overland Park at that time. And I went to the library of the elementary school I was at. And I asked her if I could read the Iliad, the Odyssey. And she looked at me like, do you know what those books are? And I only knew it what my grandmother had told me. But I said, yeah, I think so. And then they bring up the book, and it's not a children's edition of the Odyssey or the Iliad. It's like literally a great translation. And I did not realize that it's all the way through. But I fell in love with it. I brought it back, I brought the Iliad back, then she gave me the Odyssey, I brought the Odyssey back. She gave me the Song of Roland, then she gave me, which is the story of Charlemagne. Then she gave me the Iliad, and she just kept feeding me books, and then she turned me on to Alexander Dumas, Three Musketeers, 20 years after, 10 years after. Great books, the kind of what the Cristo, the Man of the Iron Mask. I read all of it, not just borrowed them. So for me, as an immigrant, the library was the refuge. So one place that I never was quiet, because I was always quiet. And the library made a point to highlight what I was doing. So what I want to do is I want to just start, and I want to go through this real quick. But I do encourage you at some point, if you want to ask a question. It's like I told Dr. I can talk for hours, and sometimes I do. But I'll just go by policy this year. So this is a picture of my brother and I. This is our passport. We shared it together. We arrived here in 1964. It was, I can remember exactly December 29, 1964, 5:30 in the evening. We landed in Miami Airport. My brother and I had been entrusted in the care of the, what do you call it, the stewardesses and pilots. So they put us up front, right behind the cabin. And they took care of us. It was the first time my brother and I had flown anywhere together alone. It was an experience. We landed in Miami, met at the immigration office. The reason my brother and I flew alone is my mother had moved up here to the States 4 years earlier. She had married a man that was stationed, he was an Air Force pilot. She had remarried. My father had done, never got to know him. But she had married an American who was stationed at Fort Leavenworth, it was the Air Force. So she moved up here. So she spent 4 years trying to find and get herself settled. She brought my sister with her. And in the meantime, then I also had another brother, my half brother, that was born here. But my brother and I were left in the care of my grandmother. That's why I said this word about my grandmother reading the book. That's how she was teaching me to read. But when we came to this country, this is the first thing that I've never forgotten, and this is why being so important to talk about these kinds of narratives. When we got on that plane, my grandma had told us, you're going to go see your mother. I hadn't seen my mother for 4 years. So I did not have that relationship that, you know, a kid, his mother had, my brother and I didn't. As far as we knew, our aunts and uncles and my grandmother were the foundational family. They had as much as we could remember. So when we come here to see our mother, we're thinking we're just going on a trip. Like if I was going to go visit my aunt in Barranquilla or Camanga or Medellin or Bogota, it would just be like we go spend months with them, then we'd come back home. We came to this country and within over 2 weeks, we knew we were never going back. And it was miserable. One, I didn't speak the language. Two, I did not recognize the food. Three, the music was foreign to me. The way people dressed was totally different. And when we arrived in Kansas City, there was a snowstorm. I had never seen snow in my life. I hated winter ever since. So I've learned to love living in this country. This is my mother. I will say she was the inspiration for me becoming an artist. She never wanted me to be an artist. I was telling somebody else. My mother always had aspirations for kids, and as most immigrants do, they want to succeed in ways that they don't succeed. So my mother wanted me to be a professional. She wanted me to work as a lawyer, as an engineer or something, doctoring. My grandmother wanted me to be a priest. I'm not priest material. I knew that very early, but I was never quite. But my mother was an artist. She was a dancer. She was a ballet, political dancer. This was the studio that she had in Bogota. She would have been, I probably would have been about 5 years old then, and this was shortly before she appeared. That art career basically ended. There was an accident. Her leg was broken, and she never could quite regain the form. She became a very good teacher. But it's funny, I always tell her, it's your fault that I became an artist. So this is my first art experience. It's a conceptual piece. Bear with me. It'll come around. We went, so when I said that I'd never seen a snow, so we have a custom in Colombia. I was born in kind of the jungle area up in the mountains, coffee. Then we go down to the Magdalena River. And one of the things that we would do is we would go every Christmas the uncles and the cousins and kids go out to this island, and we chop down a tree, we bring it back with us, and we take all the leaves off that tree, and then we put glue little styrofoam, white little styrofoam balls, and we set up the tree so it looked like it had snow. That's another reason I hated snow. Glue is not friendly. But so we went on this canoe, and I had to pee. And I told my uncle, I said, look, can we go back? I gotta pee. He said, no, just pee off the side of the boat. So I stood up. The wind came, blew all the way back. And ever since then, I've had this really strange desire. If I see on the river, and I guarantee you, I've peed in public, solid, patents, garden, soccer, any river that I come, or lakes or oceans. So this is kind of a catalog. The Orinoco, La Plata is in Argentina, Magdalena is where I grew up, the Nile in Egypt, the Seine in France, the Arno in Italy, the Rio Grande, the Rio Guanajuato, the Lake, Michael's, Chile. So a lot of them, and I've documented these mainly in my conceptual art piece. So that's my first book, and I still do it to this day. But I come across a body of one, and I got to it. When I was in university, I wanted to paint murals. My degrees were in art and creative language, creative writing, journalist. The sad thing is that in Kansas City at that time, nobody painted murals. They literally thought that murals were basically graffiti or littering, destroying the building. So I could never find any. A friend of mine, this is many years after I graduated, this was about 28 years ago, approached me and said, hey, I got invited by my school in Mexico to go paint some murals, right, about people and artists. And he says, and they have all these buildings, and I want to bring some artists with me. And he could only talk two other artists into it, which was me and my friend Alicia Gambino. And he says, we get to go down there and paint a mural. So we went down there, and this was the top one was really the very first mural I painted outdoors. And I remember the feeling was that he didn't tell me what was going to happen when we got there. So when we got there, imagine that these walls are plastic. And so they were kind of in disrepair. So the people that worked in that school, all the buildings have separate kind of standalone facilities, and each one of them has this line walls on the outside of it. When they knew that these artists were coming to the United States to paint murals for them, guys went out and they chipped. The workers chipped all the old line that was on there, and they recast it. When we get there, they presented the walls to us. It was like this. All of a sudden, we knew what we were up to. But then the first day that we went there to paint, it was kind of quiet. And then the bell rang, and all the kids kept pouring out. There was about 850 kids poured out. And they all gathered around us and going, what are you going to paint? I had no clue. I've never been a purpose since I was that big. But 3 weeks later, we had these murals done. This was one of them. We were invited 5 years later to come back and paint again. I painted the one on the bottom. I think there's 5 times, and painted 3 times. But when I came back to Kansas City, we decided that we wanted to start a mural business, the 3 of us. And so this is some of the murals that I painted. You can see the one up top is kind of abstract. I have a studio practice. I have my own studio. In that studio, I do whatever I want, but then I also do commissions. People want portraits or something like that, I'll do. The one on the right is talks about an immigrant experience. It's an agency in Kansas City called Batty Roads. They were immigrants. And I had just come back from Mexico and I'd seen some of this work there. So I thought, why not paint a mural that talks about what they do in there, but using art as vehicle for it. So what I'm doing is these ladies are basically stitching and weaving the clothes that they're wearing, literally. So the girl on the top, lady on the top is weaving the blanket that encloses her child. The lady in the middle is basically blanket, the dress that she's wearing. And it's talking about the cultural traditions that weaving is a very strong revolution. The next year we started getting really bigger. All of a sudden we got noticed. We painted this one girl. It's 2 blocks long, which was the craziest thing we ever did. But we didn't get paid for it, honestly. We raised the money. We raised $120,000. And the artists, of which by that time there were about 8 of us, we only got $10,000 to split among us, and we worked about 3 months on that. But after we had painted that one, my niece came home and did a story on it. And then this man reached out to us and he said, it was really interesting because he said something that really kind of changed my life. He said, I want you guys to bid on this wall. I want you to paint this mural. The wall is 110 feet long, 48 feet high. Every single one of us hates heights. I do not like heights. It's terrible. But the guy said, Faus, he said, give me an estimate of how much you would charge. And I don't want you to give it to me. I want to use this as a second so you can sell it to other people. I want you to do it for me as if you're a professional. Take your job seriously. Nobody had ever done this. Every time we get or somebody in a mural, they would say, okay, what kind of discount can you give us? Can we just pay you for the painting? This guy said, no. Tell us exactly how much you would charge. We told him $48,000. He didn't even. He said, okay, are you sure that's enough? We thought it was after we got done charging up. But that was the first. It's actually, I've started doing it because it's like 28 years old. 2 years old, actually, not 28, but this one is the Lewis and Clark expedition. They landed, they parked right across the Caw Point. As a matter of fact, they camped there. They had the first court-martial west of Mississippi. It was two of the guys got one night and dragged rum, some of the rum rations. So they had a court-martial, whipped them, and they kept them calm. So one of the bottoms from the Wyandotte Nation, Wyandotte County is a studio, which is Kansas City, Kansas. I'm going to go through this just really quick. I was talking earlier about, so this building is where my studio was at. I just moved across the alley to another one. But it used to be the Kansas building. That's where the Kansas City, Kansas newspaper was at. And one day the guy that worked there came to work and they were told that the paper all over print. It was all going to be digital. And in that building, they had an old printing press they had bought from German, huge press. It was literally from there to probably over here. It was like beautifully maintained. And there were guys that had worked there that were legacy workers. Their grandparents that worked there, their grandfather had worked there. They were there. They were working and bringing in their kids to apprentice, the ones that wanted to do it. And one day they were told, no, they were gone. The company did do one thing. They had asked the guys, they had a meeting. And they said, we're going to paint a mural over here. What would you like to have represented of that mural? It's these guys, as the chorus almost said, we want something there that lets people know what happened in this building. Because a lot of times there's no history once somebody vacates the building, it becomes something else. And so we came up with this idea of a guy running the last bill that's going to be printed in this old Hank building press. And you can see the little pedal that's coming down. It looks like a quill. So the idea is just kind of get back to the idea of the press, the writing means. And it's the sunflowers, Kansas. It's the soul press, and there's the topographic that are the K up there. We kind of got a reputation, and there was time we started getting called to do all sorts of different murals. This is one that's primarily an African American community, and it's a celebration of Kwanzaa, but it's also a celebration of history and culture. We did a series of those over town, and then when I was painting, when we were painting this mural, if you look at the bottom, the colors are kind of this burgundy brown. Well, we were painting, it's in a townhouse complex, and these kids would get out of school at 2 o'clock. Now, when kids get out of school at 2 o'clock, they don't run home. They go and see what's unique around where they're at. So they would come over there and they would bug the hell out of us, asking questions. And one day I just said, how do you guys feel about painting? Because I needed all that brown painted underneath. So I pulled out a brush and I gave them brushes because they all said, yes, we'll do it. So I gave them brushes and we had a painting. The guy that hired us to paint that mural just happened to drive it by. And he called me into his office and he says, I'll talk to you today. And so I get to the office, he says, first of all, you should have asked me, because I don't know what the insurance things are when you're having kids painting. There's, we never lived on the scaffold, so that was okay. But then he looked at me and says, how do you feel about doing a program with kids? And I said, oh, okay. I had already spent time babysitting. I said, no. I said, I'll pay you. I said, okay. Money is always something. Money always impacts you. But he also said, you can design the program. So we did. We came up with a summer program. This was our first class. It's a very mixed group. Wyandotte County is one of, Kansas City, Kansas is a very diverse community. You have recently immigrants from Laos, Cambodia, Iran. It's just a very mixed community. This was our first class. The kids got paid. It was a summer job. They worked 10 weeks, 4 hours a day, minimum wage, 5 days a week. And they came up with the idea we started painting murals. And that kind of, in a way, after that program ended, we did that for 3 years. I got approached by a museum in Kansas City, the Kemper Museum, Contemporary Art. They said, how do you feel about doing a program with kids? Again, the offer was paid, I said, okay. I mean, I got to, by that point, I was already loving working with kids. So it wasn't that big of a stretch. I didn't have to really turn my arm to it. But we did this for 3 years in a row, this program we did. But this time we were working with high school. The other kids were high school. These were middle school kids. I worked a lot in programs with youth. And one of them was kind of like gang activity, gang prevention, trying to do positive things. And I used to always say, we're working with high school kids, but we need to start with kids in middle school. Now you have to start working with them when they're even younger than that. The exposures that they get from social media, you're kind of fighting a losing battle. And that led to me, I taught at the Artists Institute for about 3 years in the foundations program. They had offered me work there, but I always turned them down. I always had an excuse to say no because I didn't want a full-time job. I just don't like that. But they offered they caught it at one time where I just didn't have easy to say no. And it was one of the most beautiful things I did. I really loved teaching. But finally I said, I want to work on my own stuff. This is a mural this mural was in the corner in Independence, and it got tagged all the time, most vile graffiti you've ever read. And they called me up and it said the guy that owned the building was always going to get raise the graffiti. It's $500 to pay it with. So what he did is he just found some paint, go to Habitat, buy some cheap paint, he didn't get what color it was, and he just covered up the graffiti. I swear, the graffiti looked better than his job. But the city was so different. The neighborhood wasn't, so they had to get us just to paint the mural. So this was the theme I came up with. The idea is a mercado market, the thing that all these communities share. They have to shop. And this is again another diverse community like Kansas City, Kansas, where they have a clinic there with staff speak up to 40 different languages. That's how many people serve. It's a marginalized community. And the little cat there in the middle, that was my cat Jones. I had rescued it 12 years before he died that summer because they took his mural. So I put him there. That's a license for me as an artist. And one day I get a call. This is 2 years ago. The mural was painted, and a bank paid for that mural. Somebody called up and said, "What happened to your mural?" And I thought they were kidding. I went and looked, it was gone. The guy that owned the building came in when it was gone. Never told anybody anything. But it taught me a really big lesson, and I think one is really important that I keep in mind is art is transient. It doesn't last forever. The only lasting power that art has is what it does to the person that sees it, observes it, ingests it, the memories and the things that attach to it. So I don't get hung up if my stuff gets painted over. I still hate that was done, but it happens. But I still keep painting murals. This is a mural I was invited to paint. So in the same community, there's, like I said, a lot of immigrant communities. They share one thing in common, love to play soccer and cultures. And the one problem they had over here is that had Somali and Eritrean kids playing, then you had Salvadorian, Mexican, other people from Central and South America, and there was tension. So they said, can you paint a mural that addresses this? Because this wall would get tagged like crazy. The other side, that's the back of the concession stand. On the other side is this beautiful soccer city. They're gorgeous. So I said, okay. So on the right, there's this, the lady has a 2-year-old holding it. She's wearing a traditional Somali dress. She's apprehensive because now her kid is 2 years old. She's beginning to learn the world. On the right, on the far side, there's a Mexican woman. She's wearing the traditional rebozo, what they call it. The culture there comes either you can carry it as a sling, you can carry your baby in the and that's the newborn. The two kids come together in later age. The girl has grown up, she's more worldly. He has gone and he's become a soccer player. And so the meet, and she offers him a gift, which is basically she's giving him a globe, the earth, the world. She's handing that to him, that's knowledge. And he's offering to her his soccer ball. And that's the idea of how we play and live with rules and stuff, right? Accomplishment. So it's this nice little thing. The fabric, the kind of traditional fabrics of the area, and the flowers look like ears, so it's like listen up. Just little things we can play with. This is totally a children's mural. It's a whole bunch of it's just iterations of children's books. So there's one part up there is of Rise Up Mice and Men. The cover of it is little mouse mother reading her little mice kids of Martin. There's Ferdinand the Bull. just, I really love it. It's all third graders. But this is what I do in my studio, it's kind of abstractions. This was for a New York, from Kansas City. This was another one. I just love color, I love light, whatever way I can get along with it. I'm also a writer, I'm a poet. I've been writing. I think I've been writing as long as I've been painting. That was probably my earliest memory. But about 6 or 7 years old, I'm drawing. I don't know what I'm drawing, I draw. A friend of mine was up to me and said, "Hey, you got poetry?" Because I was reading poetry a lot. Basically, you have enough for a book? I said, "Oh, boy, I don't know." And so he said, "Just send me some poems, get them together, and we'll put out a book." We did. The only thing he said was, "I want a picture of the cover of you." Picture, 4 pictures of you in the back. So that was my first selfie. Probably I can count on one hand how many selfies I take. That was the first one. And I let my hair down, just freaked out a lot. That led to a second book, The Life and Times of José called. Since then, I published a children's book. It's called Possum Trot. And then I also have another book in the works, trying to get it published. It's very political. Right now, people are staying away from it. But one of the problems I always have with my art is that I did so many different things. I'll try to keep them apart. One day, these guys had a show in Kansas City, they're an artist collective, Vietnam and LA, had done a show in Kansas City. And I'd come in and kind of been asked, "Hey, would you look at the show and be available and kind of talk about it with these artists or people that come to the gallery?" I said, "Sure." And as I did, what happened was it took 2 blocks of gel, right? You've seen that this gel where they shoot gun bullets into to kind of see the trajectory of it. But what they had done was they had heard about in the Gettysburg this bullet that was found in the battlefield, 2 bullets that met in one of the battlefields dug. It was a different caliber, it was 50 bullets, 5 caliber. They fused in the middle. And so what they did is say, "Why don't we look at that idea and play with it?" So they came up with this idea of using an M16 and an AK-47 to talk about issues of colonialism, imperialism. And they fired them to have them basically aimed them. They went to Delaware's huge forensics lab, and they shot them into this gel block, and they captured the impact of those. It was beautiful. I mean, those gels are things. And I started writing poetry about it, but at the same time, I was aware of what these bullets do in real life, the history that attaches to it. So it was a very macabre kind of thing. So I wrote some poems, I shared with them. Then they called me up about 6 months and said, "Hey, we've been invited to do this show at the St. Louis Contemporary Art Museum, and we'd love to use your poetry overlaid over our film." So that was my first time where I actually writing molded with art. And now I can't stop. This is a performance. Like I said, I'm also a performer, I'm an actor. A friend of mine has this little trailer. She called me, she's great. She's one of these people that are artists, but she yarns all the time. She called me up one day, she said, "Jose, can we do something together?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't yarn." She said, "Well, you tell stories. Why don't we have a yarn story out? Will you come in and tell a story and I'll just have a yarn about whatever circle and we'll just be working it." So we did. We did it in downtown Kansas City. The story I told was the story of the Bay of Pigs and why that was a big thing. And I explained to them, the only reason that became an issue, and the only reason that we are against Cuba, is because Fidel Castro had an affair with John F. Kennedy's wife. And the thing is that actually they could have met, because when Castro got married, his father-in-law hated him. He says, "I want this guy out of my life." So he basically said, "Why don't you guys on your honeymoon just get out of here?" Pay for him to go to States for 6 months. He ended up in Boston. And I'm looking to the trajectory. I said, they could have. So I told the story. And the funny thing about it is I had so many fake documents that somebody came up to me and said, "Yeah." So this is I act, like I said, the only reason I ended up in acting was that somebody got a Spanish play and they couldn't find Spanish actors. So they reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" "Sure." So they hired me as a painter. Basically, this is called Ana the Library Lady, which is a beautiful story about the power of libraries. If you don't have a collection, it's here. It's about a guy named Tomas Rivera. He became an educator, important figure for a lot of Latinos. But basically, I'm his grandfather, and I'm using art as a way to teach him basic life lessons. I'm a very kindly person. good person, loving person. And then the next time I got asked to be in a record show, I play the guy in the middle. This is in Juarez. Basically, I'm a drug lord. And the girl with the leading there, I just had her killed. So I went like from this great grandfather to this. But that's the power of art. And then I was asked to be in a play called Anna the Prophets, which was a beautiful play. And this time I played the scion, the patriarch of a family of Cubans that have moved to Florida. And they have a back rolling company. It's a beautiful play, very tragic. And also just did a play here called the Avocado Tree. And this was all done in Spanish, but all Spanish-speaking cast, Spanish director, Spanish writer. It was really, which is different about 2 months ago. Performance is one of the things that I did when I went to college, basically just whenever I can, make stuff up on the spot. I'm working with a dancer, musicians, filmmaker, my friend, Leslie Hardy. It's a beautiful, we did this outdoors. When we set up to do it, it's a park in Kansas City. When we set up to do it, we didn't think about the weather. It's November, 17 degrees. We had all these things for the, we had people that showed up, we had those outdoor heaters, things, gas things. But as performers, we were sort of. Like I said, I'm also a poet, and I started working, I've always wanted to work with musicians. And so I had a chance, this guy here in the middle right here, that's right now, it's called Volunteers from Guatemala, incredible musician. And we were talking with him, I said, I'd love to put my poetry to music. He said, hey, I've got an album of this. I said, to go, why don't we meet? But I said, okay, but can we just improvise? I have no idea what I'm gonna say. So we did, we get to the studio, and he said, okay, what are we gonna do? I said, I don't know, why don't you guys play a little bit so I can get a sense of how to improvise, and then we'll do something. But they looked at me like, I mean, you haven't written anything, is it? No. Whatever comes out, comes out. So this is a short clip of whatever. I love that one. And then because that was so good, another one. I also work with dancers, and that's no history there. I've always been fascinated by dance. I know it's because my mother influenced. I love the way the movement takes place. I love choreographers. So this lady right here on this end, Colato, and Olivia, and oh God, what's her name? Anyway, she's just moved to New York. We had done something together, and then somebody from the next Arts Commission reached out to me and says, hey, we got some programming we got to do. We need somebody to fill in for these days. Awesome. I said, yeah, I'll come up with something. They gave me $600. So I hired these guys and I said, hey, let's just meet them, do something. We had no idea what we were doing. We arrived and we just improvised on the spot. It was beautiful. I kept the stuff. But I've worked with them. So there's this other friend of mine, Debbie Barrett-Jones. She does incredible weaver, look at all the weavings in the back. And then we're doing this with musicians and dancers. Again, improvising around the stories. She's from Norway. Her family comes from Norway. So a lot of those themes that she has in her back kind of reflect her growing up and coming from a different country. So it's just fit right with the way I think about things. Here's another part of that performance. And I love the way that the loom that she's using has this rhythm, this clapping when it comes back, and she does that. Just beautiful. It became a great little metronome. But I still paint. This is in my studio. I'll go through these real quick. This is a series of paintings that I'm painting about the immigrant experience. These are people that have come to this country and their work. They mow the lawns, roofs, whatever. And we never know really what their history is. So I thought, well, why don't I just make them characters? But they're riding these great lawnmowers. Lawnmowers are like sophisticated, crazy-ass thing that we have just to mow lawn. And I thought, well, we entrust it to these guys. But they come representing their own culture. So on the left over there is the Inca, Atahualpa, the last one is like the Inca Empire. In the middle is, that would be the Maya. And then over here would be the Aztec warrior. And so I represent them as figures in traditional costume, but yet they're stuck doing this. So you don't know their history. Those are very important moves to me. That one won't show. This is just an abstraction. These are the kinds of abstractions that we get into a lot. Some of these are very big. It's just line, it's just literally the doodles that I would do when I first started drawing when I was a kid. And now they just keep growing, growing. Okay, now let me tie all this back up. I was on a poetry tour and I was in Buffalo. And I told him, my friend and I were drinking and talking. And I told him my story about how I started peeing everywhere I went. This is why. And he says to me, "Wow, I've got a great spot for you." And so we get into the car and we drive out. I did not remember, maybe I conveniently forgot that Niagara River is in Buffalo. So I got this spot, so we went. And he took me to this place and I could hear the roar of the falls on the other side. So I peed into the river. And then we went over to the other side. And lo and behold, all these people are paying money to go and ride up to them. And to me, right there was a great metaphor for the power of art. Art will get you when you least expect it and you never know. So if you're ever in the midst, be careful, I might be the one to just pee. And this is my motto, if I pee here, all of this. So that's my journey. I'm very open to any questions you guys have. I can tell stories forever. I'm also a storyteller. And if you're ever interested, I did a story about one of the murals I painted for the Moth Story Hour. Just look up my name. I think they spelled it, they put F-A-U-S-E. But you can find it. It's on the Moth Story Hour. It's like a 15-minute conversation. And it talks about the importance of art. And I think that covers everything that we have to say about art. As far as my experience, I was sent to a boys' school because I was in trouble. Like I kicked out of high school, like I into a lot of trouble. Mainly because I couldn't relate to a lot of things, right? I discovered drugs, I did all those things. One of the schools I got sent to was Boys Town, Nebraska. And to me, it was a place as odd as it was, because it was a whole bunch of troubled kids. I found my community. And I think that's kind of why I ended up getting in trouble. The guys that ended up in Boys Town, friends, when I came back to high school, this is what got me in trouble. But also, there is where I first met the teachers that started to encourage me. So one teacher was Mr. Lawson. I've never forgotten the man because I remember one day he had us write something. And he didn't know that I just like to write whatever. And he came up to me and he says, "This is beautiful." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." He says, "No, really, this is good." What he had us do was describe field, like with all the flowers and everything, come up with. So I went and did research because I had librarians and taught me. I went to the library and I found this in a certain area and I said, "Well, what flowers grow there?" And I wrote them all down and then I wrote a poem that identified all these flowers and there's somebody walking through the field and seeing all these flowers. They're coming home. And I wrote that as a poem. He loved it. He says, "You're a writer." He encouraged me all the time. When I was in the 5th grade, where I met Mr. Lawson, that was 2 years later, there was another teacher who had me write something, had us all write something in the class. I can't even remember what the lesson was. But she read what I had written and she said, "Mr. Faus, would you please stand up and read this in class?" I was terrified. But I did. And she says, "That is a great example of writing." I have no clue why it was, but I do remember the sentence I wrote. "Rose up on his saddle, wheeled about." I had no idea what wheeled about means. I knew what a saddle was, and it came from us watching Bonanza in Colombia. So they did from my grandmother let us watch. There is known as the Ponderosa, and it's big Bonanza. That's where it came from. But it kind of like literally just lit a fire to me. These things keep coming together and winding around. That teacher, a year later, really bears the dawn. But she asked me, she says, we were having a food drive to all the classes, right? 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. And she said, "We're not doing so good. Jose, you write." I was Joe at that time. "You write. Why don't you write us a poem to introduce your class?" I said, "Okay." I wrote it. She was a good teacher. So I wrote it. The next morning I come to class. There's an announcement over the loudspeaker. "Joe Faus, please come to the principal's office. Joe Faus, please come to the principal's office." I was terrible. I was used to going to the principal's office. But I thought, no, what the hell did I do this time? At least I always knew why I got in trouble. When I got there, he says, he's got the poem, and he says, "So, young man, you wrote this?" "Yes." "I want you to read it to the whole school." No, that's not what happened. He saw me terrified. He says, "No, we're going to use the intercom." Okay. So I got in front of the intercom, and the announcements go to the classroom. So I read my poem. And this is where I knew I was wrong. After we got done, I remember going to lunch. This girl came up, says, "Oh, you're a poet." The way she smiled at me is, "Yes, I'm a poet." And I've been a poet ever since. The reason I say that is because when I was in Boy Scout, the very first orientation we had was, the counselors said, if you want to make it in this place so that nobody bothers you, you have to go out for sports. I said, okay, soccer, no, we don't have soccer. We have boxing, we have football, and we have wrestling. Well, football sounded like soccer. So I said, let me do football because I did not want to get beat up. Boxing. So I ended up doing football. Later, it was art that was the thing that allowed me to be a part. In a boys' school, it's the physicality of the music. You got to prove yourself. I wasn't mean there. I could get football. Man, I loved football. I said, what it was, the guy says, you're going to play defense. I said, okay, what did I do? Hit the guy with the ball. Okay, I can do that. I was very good at it. And then I was the guy that's actually very good at running away from people. But I ended up running back too. But it was, but that allowed me to become, kind of like go into this. But it was art that's allowed me in my life, as I chose. So that is my presentation. But please, if you have any questions, I'm open to any questions.
You've probably seen when the steamship Arabia is moving out of the farm.
Yeah, that's
Are you
exactly.
dreaming that the car can put up there now?
You know, actually, we painted that, the Arabia, Steamboat Arabia. The guy that hired us to do that mural, the first one he did was the Steamboat Arabia. He put the Steamboat Arabia in it. I didn't show it because the picture's old now. It's kind of, I don't think it doesn't represent well. But no, he hired us to do it. It's really sad because, have you been to it? You've seen it? And it's a beautiful thing. And
Have you been up to the bird train? It was a miner's steamboat, similar boat, with a whole different class of people on it. And it's part of the state of Iowa's museum.
Oh, man,
It's in the river. And
Is it the same guys?
it's a wonderful, no,
Yes.
It's worth comparing.
Oh, I love the idea, especially when you think about where they found the Arabia. And I love rivers. I mean, you can tell, right? I don't feel rivers. But I've always loved the ideas of rivers. And everything like those really amazing river. Because I remember one of the first things I read was in the history book, something about the Mile Wide Missouri. And I go down and go, that ain't mile wide, it's like river. But then you look at bluff to bluff and you realize that was the channel of Missouri. It ran wherever it could. And it was a mile wide. You could have actually ridden a horse across it. But the Corps of Engineers basically dug a channel. But all those steamboats, they're buried on those planks where the river used to be. And so I love that idea. Those guys are still, I think they still were doing some more boats too. Yeah. But if you've never been there, you should go before the people. Any other questions? Well, you guys are so timid, I'm not used. Oh, I was born in Colombia. Colombia, yeah. So I was born in Bucaramanga, which is in the coffee region. And I'll tell you a kind of interesting story. When we left South America, the last place we stayed at was Cartagena. And I'm staying with some friends there. Cartagena's right on the ocean, Caribbean. It's hot, it's incredibly beautiful area. And so when I came to this country, I always thought I was from the ocean. But I always, every year, I would make it a point to go to the ocean. I think, how I just get to the ocean. For 16 years, I always went away to get to the ocean. And then 3 years ago, I finally went home to Colombia for the first time. I'm 69 now. Been 60 years. Back then, it would been 15 years since I've been back. And I went, for some reason, my family lives in Quindío, which is up in the mountains in Antioquia. And I did not have a desire to go to the ocean once. And I realized I was born in the mountains. I related more to the mountains. The ocean was just something that was the last thing I saw before I left. But I did not have a desire. Now I'm going back. This March, my niece is getting married. She lives here, was born here. She's fallen in love with Colombia. She's going to have a wedding again in that mountain. So I'm looking forward. And I'm probably going to see.
Yeah.
Food was that good?
Thank you, sorry about.
Thank you.
Much, I don't know that I had many questions to ask you. I would love it. Beautiful. What part of Kansas City?
I live in, Westport. Yeah, it's actually, what do you call it, Walker neighborhood. It's funny, Kansas City is one of those places, where I've lived 49 years in Kansas City. I've lived in the country 60 years, and I've lived for 47. And, people ask me why, I said, well, it's just what happened. I had trouble. But it's interesting because I've managed to live within half a mile of the state line. It's not, it's just that, that's what Kansas City is. So before I moved back to the house, I had lived in literally 4 blocks of the state line. Then I moved back 4 blocks of the house. I could throw a rock and get to the place. So yeah, it's a very scary city.